Welcome to Diplomatic Channel. I am Amarachi Ubani. Africa Day comes up on May 25th every year. It was on this day, 1963, that the Organization of the African Unity was established. It commemorates Africa's independence, freedom, and liberation from colonial imperialists. 38 years since the OAU, it has metamorphosed into the African Union, and today, boasting 56 years of determined efforts for unity among the African people and socio-economic freedom from dominion and exploitation. Africa Day was also inspired by Ghana's independence, being the first African country south of the Sahara to gain independence on March 5th, 1957, under the leadership of Kwame Nkrumah, that inspired other countries in the region to also seek independence. Africans around the world are supposed to mark the day, reminding themselves of how great they are as a people, promoting unity and the African identity. Marking the Africa Day occasion annually comes with themes set for each year, with this year's theme set to be Year of Refugees, Returnees and IDPs towards durable solutions to forced displacement in Africa. African Union Commission Chairperson, His Excellency Musa Faki Mahamat, says this year the official launch of the African Continental Free Trade Area, which seeks to provide relevant answers to several issues, including infrastructure, women, well-being, energy, agricultural productivity, and human resources, among others, will be at the extraordinary summit of the AU scheduled to take place in Niamey on July 7th this year. As for this year's AU chairman, Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, African countries need to benefit from both the private and the public sectors to develop their infrastructure, interconnectivity and integration. Today, Africa, as we know it, is plagued by political crisis, droughts, farming, civil unrest and even distrust. Is there still unity on the continent? Do we still have the spirit of Ubuntu? Earlier, I spoke to Ambassador Olusegun Akinsanya, a former ambassador of Nigeria to Ethiopia, the headquarters of the African Union. He is also PR to the AU and UNECA and currently the Secretary General of the Association of Retired Career Diplomats of Nigeria and second National Vice President of same association about Africa's efforts towards integration. Ambassador Akinsanya, thank you for joining us on Diplomatic Channel. And I might say happy Africa Day to you, even though this was on Saturday this weekend. What should that mean for Nigeria?
First of all, let me thank you, Marachi, for having me. Happy Africa Day celebrations. It should mean a lot for Nigeria. The reminiscences, the euphoria of the converging in the African Hall on the 25th of September 1963, when our leaders, the margin of the Monrovia and the Casablanca group, now came into one to meet in the African Hall. So for Nigeria, the euphoria, the commitment that was shown by our leaders, and the passion that after our colonial experiences, after the Pan-African efforts, which of course saw the dynamism that we see in the Nigerians, first generation leaders to foster African unity. So that euphoria, that reminiscences are there. What are we celebrating?
Yeah, because
is there something to celebrate?
I have asked that question earlier, if we still have the spirit of Ubuntu, I guess.
Ubuntu.
But you know, the celebrations were pretty much very, very low-key in Nigeria, in fact, probably non-existent, except in the private sector. Didn't we have any reason to celebrate?
Well, you know, there is some measure of celebration, as is done in other countries. In fact, when I read it and I saw it in the papers, to say that the UBA took the seal out of a government in celebrating it. I've served in many other countries. Everybody looks forward to 25th of May as Africans Day, done by the government in collaboration with African ambassadors and their spouses In Moscow, I was president of that association. And it's an opportunity to celebrate in a way, but at the same time, to think through the Africanness of our postures, where we are coming from, where we are, and what the future lies. Have we been able to succeed in achieving that noble ideas that our forefathers have in African unity, in fostering international cooperation? So for Nigeria, I feel I think our government should take the bull by the horn of celebrating it every year, along with African ambassadors, to do some introspection. More so now, since the organization has become people to people, not just states, we should still be able to mark that day, to do a rethink, and to look at our Africanness, to look at the issue of unity. Where are we? Where are we going? Have we forgotten all those euphoria?
And I will ask you that question, have we forgotten it? Because it appears that, the way Africa is right now, every country is striving, to be the leader on the continent. You see countries like Rwanda coming up, you have South Africa, you have Egypt and the strong economies and so on. And, the question is, where is Nigeria in all of this? Well,
I mean, Nigeria will continue to play a very prominent role. We have always been consistent since independence. From Tafawa Balewa up to Buhari, the consistency is there. We show a lot of commitment, both in terms of our contributions, both in terms of making our manpower available, and in the roles that we play in the policy organs of even the AU that has transformed into from non-intervention in the affairs of member states to non-indifference in the affairs of member states. Nigeria has always played a prominent role. But what is important for us is a bit of consistency and making, ensuring that we take the best out of an organization that we are putting a lot into. The leadership of Nigeria cannot be questioned, both in terms of capacity. I'll give you one example. Since the establishment of the Peace and Security Council, Nigeria is the only country that have remained unbroken in our membership of the Peace and Security Council. This is consistent with our capacity. I've had opportunities to share that Peace and Security Council many years. And, so the leadership of Nigeria is something that many African countries also realize. But the issue is that we have not been able to achieve most of these things because of the varying colonial experiences
of each African country.
The French playing their own role. And other powers are playing their role. But for all the Africanness, to move from norm setting to implementation. Quite a lot of norm setting. And it was during the time of Nigeria's chairmanship of the African Union, of which I was the chairman of the Permanent Representatives Committee. President Obasanjo was the chair. And we were there for 2 years. Countries, the heads of states asked Nigeria to continue. Other countries do it for 1 year. Nigeria stands as a country that shared the African Union for 2 years. And that was the period we have a lot of things that are in place, the conventions, African peace and security architecture, African governance architecture, and many things. But the issue about African countries is moving from norm setting to implementation.
Wow. And of course, Nigeria was one of the brains behind the African Continental Free Trade Area, and yet we have not signed on to that. Why are we a bit reluctant towards integration in Africa? I know we sort of champion this. Every time we talk at conferences and so on, we are very passionate about wanting Africa to integrate. I mean, it's much easier getting a a visa to a foreign country outside of Africa than getting within Africa.
Yeah.
Movement is restricted, markets are restricted. It's a bit difficult.
No, you touched a very important point there. As I mentioned earlier, I was part of the promotion of economic diplomacy during Minister Ikewachukwu's period. And one of the things we were doing at that time was to explore markets in the West Coast, promote investments with many African countries, but explore markets for Nigeria. There was a time that Nigerian goods were flooding West African markets in spite of the opposition that was brought about by it. The CFOs of this world, other multinationals with French interests. Our Pojo was everywhere. You go to Sandaga market in Senegal, you find Nigerian goods. You go to Makola market in Ghana, you find Nigerian goods. Then our private sector was supposed to explore that situation. What did they? One of the things we have always considered is the low inter-African trade, that we need to boost that volume to stem informal economy or informal trade, portmanteau traders all over West Africa. But the issue is that we championed the negotiation, painstaking negotiations on the AFTA. In fact, one of our colleagues, a junior colleague, led the negotiations, EU negotiations, to really make it a success. We signed it to now come on board. There were oppositions, a lot of crime, by the same private sector that have really not explored to the fullest the efforts that Nigeria made to get the best out of the West Coast. That was why ACAN, for instance, that I belong, we resisted Morocco trying to join the ECOWAS.
Yeah.
And these are the things. I believe that the government, President Mohamed Buhari, set up a committee to convince their private sector and all that. I'm not sure whether we have come on board, but many African countries have signed. Those fears are far-fetched. We've been on this argument for years. The private sector wants, of course, better infrastructure to be able to produce. But I think we should come on board with the AFTA. It's in the long-term interest. We should turn our challenges into opportunities.
Yeah, and it's been quite difficult. I mean, I know the ECOWAS countries have, an agreement of free travel.
Yeah, free trade.
Free travel, free trade.
Yeah.
Why has it been so difficult for the African Union to achieve, the same goal? I know you mentioned earlier that different countries have their own interests and so on, and that, sort of hampers things along the way. But it is possible, isn't it? To achieve the same scenario we have with the European Union.
The free movement of trade, of persons and services is a key element of integration. European Union that we follow has been all the member states, 27 member states of the Union, have enjoyed one thing or the other. But I believe that it's going to be a gradual process. It has to be fast because, I mean, it's not a good thing that you get European visas better than an African, you get an African visa. So I believe that, it's coming up, it's something that needs to be speeded up, and they are talking about it. The EU and the various policy organs are talking about it, that you need this for the continental integration to foster unity. And Nigeria has been the avant-garde. In 1980, the Lagos Plan of Action of 1980 remains the model, the blueprint for economic development. That after is a part. So for us to continue to play that critical role, I think we must come on board on some of these continental issues.
Ambassador Akinsanya, this has been a lovely interview, and I would love to have you back. Thank you so much for speaking with us on Diplomatic Channel.
It's my pleasure. It's my pleasure. Thank you. Thank you.
When we come back after the break, UK Prime Minister Theresa May announces her resignation. What happens next? Stay with us.